Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
For centuries, the Roman dodecahedron confused historians and scientists. It appeared across Roman lands, yet no record explained its purpose. Now, modern science and archaeology have brought new answers, and they are deeply unsettling. What was this object really used for? And why was it hidden so carefully? Join us as we uncover the truth and ask the questions Rome never answered. The object that should not exist. The Roman dodecahedron is one of the most confusing objects ever linked to the Roman world. It does not fit into any known category of Roman life. It does not behave like a tool, a weapon, a decoration, or a common household object. From the moment scholars examine it, the object creates questions instead of answers. The object is made of bronze and shaped with 12 flat faces. Each face is a pentagon, not a square or triangle. Every face has a circular hole at its center, but the holes are not the same size. Some are wide, others are narrow, and there is no clear order. At every corner where the faces meet, there is a small, rounded knob. These knobs are carefully placed and often cast as part of the object or attached with great skill. The inside of the object is fully hollow. There are no moving parts, no inner supports, and no markings inside or outside. Nothing about its design looks random. Bronze was valuable in the Roman world. It required controlled heat, skilled workers, and time. The Romans did not waste bronze on meaningless objects. Every known bronze item from the Roman period had a reason to exist, whether for work, worship, trade, or display. That is what makes the dodecahedron so strange. It is complex, costly, and carefully made, yet its purpose remains unknown. The rarity of the object deepens the mystery. Archaeologists have confirmed just over 100 examples across all of Europe. This is an extremely small number when compared to normal Roman production. Roman tools, coins, lamps, and vessels were produced in huge quantities. Even specialized objects usually survive in the hundreds or thousands. An object with such careful design should exist in large numbers if it were useful or official. Instead, the dodecahedron appears only in small and scattered amounts. This rarity breaks another Roman rule. The Roman Empire valued standard forms. Military gear followed patterns. Religious items followed rules. Administrative tools were copied exactly across regions. The dodecahedra do not follow this system. No two are identical. Hole sizes vary, knob shapes differ, dimensions change from one object to another. This lack of standardization suggests the object was not part of an official Roman system. The silence surrounding the object is even more disturbing. No Roman writer ever described it. No engineer mentioned it. No priest recorded its use. Roman culture was heavily documented. Texts survive describing water pipes, road widths, altar tools, farming methods, and even children's toys. Manuals were written for construction, warfare, and religious practice. Yet not one surviving Roman source names or explains the dodecahedron. Art also remains silent. Roman reliefs, mosaics, frescoes, and carvings show daily life in great detail. Tools are shown in hands. Ritual objects appear beside gods. Household items are clearly depicted. The dodecahedron never appears, not once. This absence is not normal. When an object mattered in Roman life, it appeared in words or images. The dodecahedron appears in neither. This level of silence suggests something important. It points away from forgetfulness and toward exclusion. Forgetting happens by accident. Erasure happens by choice. When an object is made with care, appears across many regions, and yet leaves no trace in official memory, it suggests restraint. It suggests the object existed outside approved knowledge. The Romans were not neutral observers of belief. They controlled religious practices. They regulated rituals. They punished unsanctioned divination. Anything that operated beyond state approval risked being ignored or suppressed. An object that did not serve the empire's structure had no place in its records. So, if the Romans were obsessed with recording their world, why does this object appear everywhere in their territory, but nowhere in their words? Where they appear, and where they never do. The mystery of the Roman dodecahedron becomes even stranger when location is examined. Where these objects are found matters just as much as what they look like. Their geographic pattern does not match Roman habits, and that mismatch raises serious questions. Confirmed Roman dodecahedra have been found mainly in Britain, Gaul, Germania, and the Low Countries. These areas formed the western edge of the Roman Empire. They were frontier regions, far from the political and cultural center. These lands were Roman in law, but not fully Roman in belief. Local traditions continued beneath the surface of imperial rule. What is missing from the map is more important than what is present. No dodecahedron has ever been recovered from Rome itself. None have been found in Italy. None appear in the eastern provinces. None come from North Africa. These regions were deeply Romanized. They held strong administrative control, long-standing cities, and central religious authority. If the dodecahedron were a Roman invention, these areas should contain examples. They do not. This absence is not random. Roman objects normally spread outward from the center. Coins minted in Rome traveled across the empire. Military equipment followed legions wherever they went. Religious symbols appeared in temples from Syria to Spain. The dodecahedron does the opposite. It avoids the center and lives only on the edges. When scholars compare this distribution to known Roman tools, the difference is clear. Military equipment appears near forts and roads. Administrative objects appear near cities and offices. Religious objects appear in temples and shrines. Dodecahedra appear in none of these predictable settings. They often come from rural areas, small settlements, or places with unclear function. Frontier provinces were zones of tension. Roman law ruled daily life, but older belief systems survived quietly. In Britain and Gaul, Celtic traditions continued beneath Roman structures. Sacred sites existed near rivers, boundaries, and burial grounds. These places mattered spiritually long before Rome arrived. The dodecahedron appears in these regions, not in places shaped entirely by Roman order. This pattern suggests cultural blending, not Roman invention. The object may have been accepted quietly by local elites who followed Roman customs publicly while maintaining older practices privately. Roman technology could have been used to create an object that served a non-Roman purpose. This would explain the high quality and the lack of official recognition. Peripheral regions were also harder to monitor. Imperial authority weakened with distance. Practices discouraged in Rome could survive in the provinces. Objects tied to older traditions could exist without written approval. Silence became a form of control. What could not be stopped was simply not recorded. If these objects were Roman, why did they only appear where Rome's control was weakest? Precision without purpose. The Roman dodecahedron shows a level of skill that immediately demands respect. It was not made quickly or casually. Every example proves that trained metalworkers were involved. Bronze casting in the Roman period was not simple. It required careful control of heat, timing, and material balance. The dodecahedron was often created using a lost wax process. This method involved shaping the object in wax, covering it in clay, heating it so the wax melted away, and then pouring molten bronze into the empty space. One mistake could ruin the entire piece. This process was usually reserved for objects that mattered. Statues, ritual vessels, and important tools were made this way. Everyday items were cast in simpler molds or made from cheaper materials. Choosing lost wax casting for the dodecahedron shows that the object was considered important from the beginning. It was never a test piece or a practice form. It was meant to be finished and complete. Many dodecahedra show impressive balance. Some can rest evenly on more than one face without tipping. This means the weight distribution was planned. Balance like this does not happen by chance. It requires careful shaping of each face and consistent thickness of the bronze walls. Roman craftsmen understood balance well, but they usually applied it to items like scales, weights, or moving parts. The dodecahedron has no moving parts and no visible function that requires balance. The effort still remains. Symmetry also stands out. Each face aligns cleanly with the others. The knobs at the corners are evenly placed. The edges meet at precise angles. This level of geometric control required both mathematical understanding and experience. Yet the Romans usually used geometry to solve problems. Bridges stood longer, roads drained better, machines worked smoothly. The dodecahedron solves no known practical problem. The holes are one of the most confusing features. Every face has a circular opening, but the sizes differ. Some are wide, some narrow, and there is no repeating pattern. In Roman tools, measurement relied on consistency. Measuring devices had fixed units. Surveying tools followed known ratios. The dodecahedron ignores this logic. If it were meant to measure distance, size, or volume, the holes would need to follow a clear system. They do not. This inconsistency makes standard measurement impossible. No two dodecahedra match closely enough to share a single measuring method. That means the object could not be part of a shared Roman system. Roman engineers depended on shared standards to function across the empire. Anything lacking those standards would fail quickly in real use. The object also fails as a weapon. It is too light to strike effectively. The thin bronze walls would dent or crack on impact. The knobs are rounded, not sharp. There is no grip, handle, or attachment point. Roman weapons were designed for durability and efficiency. The dodecahedron offers neither. It also fails as a tool. Tools show signs of wear. Edges smooth out. Contact points change shape. Most dodecahedra show little to no wear. The holes are not polished by repeated use. The edges remain sharp. This suggests limited handling. Tools also tend to appear near workshops or work areas. Dodecahedra rarely does. The object does not work as a toy. Bronze was far too valuable for children's playthings. Roman toys were usually made from wood, clay, or bone. The weight and complexity of the dodecahedron make it unsuitable for play. As decoration, it also falls short. Roman decorative objects often carried symbols, figures, or patterns. Decoration had meaning. Gods, animals, plants, or scenes told stories. The dodecahedron carries no images and no decoration beyond its shape. Pure form without symbols is rare in Roman art. Durability raises another issue. Bronze is strong, but the dodecahedron's thin walls and open structure make it fragile. It has no reinforcement. It was not meant to survive rough use. This again argues against daily function. All of this leads to one conclusion. Skilled workers invested time, rare materials, and advanced techniques into an object that does not behave like a practical item. The effort does not match any known Roman need. That imbalance is impossible to ignore. Why would skilled metalworkers invest this level of precision into something never meant for daily use? Theories that failed under evidence. Because the Roman dodecahedron defies easy explanation, many theories have been proposed. Over time, archaeologists tested these ideas using evidence, experiments, and comparison with known Roman objects. One by one, the theories failed. One of the earliest ideas was that the dodecahedron served as a measuring device. Supporters claimed that users could look through pairs of holes to estimate distance or size. The problem appears immediately. The holes vary too much. Measurement requires fixed ratios. Roman measurement systems were strict and shared across regions. The dodecahedron offers no consistent scale. Experiments showed that different examples give different results for the same task. This makes shared use impossible. Another idea suggested a military purpose, especially as a rangefinder. This theory claimed soldiers could use the object to judge distance to a target. Again, evidence contradicts the claim. Dodecahedra are rarely found near forts or battle sites. They are not found with weapons or armor. Roman military tools followed strict designs and were widely produced. The dodecahedron does not match this pattern. Knitting or textile theory became popular much later. Supporters claimed the holes were used to size gloves or textiles. Roman textile work, however, did not rely on such tools. Known Roman techniques used fingers, rods, or simple frames. Casting a complex bronze object for this purpose would be unnecessary. No fibers or textile residue have been found on any dodecahedron. The theory fails both logically and archaeologically. Candlestick use was also suggested. This idea does not survive inspection. Many dodecahedra have open bottoms, making them unstable for holding candles. More importantly, there is no consistent evidence of burning. Bronze exposed to flame shows discoloration and soot marks. Most dodecahedra show clean surfaces. Wax residue is also absent. Roman lighting tools are well documented, and the dodecahedron does not resemble them. Some claim the object was purely decorative. This explanation ignores Roman habits. Decoration always carried meaning. Decorative items often appeared in homes, temples, or graves with clear context. The dodecahedron appears alone and without explanation. It lacks imagery and symbolism, typical of Roman decorative art. Decoration without a message was not common. Experimental archaeology has tested many of these ideas. Researchers created replicas and tried using them as tools. Measuring attempts failed. Lighting tests showed instability. Textile experiments proved impractical. None of the tests produced consistent results. Each failed theory removed another practical explanation. The object refuses to fit into daily Roman life. That refusal is not accidental. It suggests the object belonged to a category rarely discussed in official records. When every practical explanation collapses, what kind of object is left standing? The discovery that changed the conversation. For many years, the Roman dodecahedron remained a puzzle mainly because of how it was found. Most examples came from accidental discoveries. Many were uncovered by metal detector users, plowed up by farming, or pulled from riverbanks. These finds often lacked proper records. When an object is removed from the ground without documentation, important information is lost. Archaeologists call this missing information context. Without context, even the most unusual object becomes harder to understand. Context explains where an object was placed, how deep it was buried, and what surrounded it. It shows whether an object was lost, thrown away, stored, or buried with care. Most dodecahedra were found alone, without clear association to buildings or other items. This allowed speculation to grow. Without context, scholars could argue endlessly about purpose, use, and meaning. That situation changed with the discovery at Norton Disney in England. Unlike earlier finds, this dodecahedron was uncovered during a planned archaeological excavation. The site was explored slowly and carefully by trained volunteers working under professional supervision. Every layer of soil was recorded. Every object was logged and mapped. Nothing was rushed. The excavation revealed more than a single object. Alongside the dodecahedron, archaeologists found Roman coins dating to the 3rd century, fragments of pottery used for daily life, and iron tools linked to work and maintenance. There were also traces of wooden post holes, suggesting nearby structures. These remains pointed to a settled Roman site, possibly a villa or workshop area. The dodecahedron was not found on the surface. It was buried within a specific soil layer that archaeologists describe as sealed. A sealed context means the layer was undisturbed after it was formed. No later digging, flooding, or movement had altered it. This is critical because it proves the object was placed there during a known period and left untouched. Objects in sealed contexts provide reliable evidence. They allow archaeologists to move beyond guesswork. In this case, the sealed layer showed that the dodecahedron was deposited deliberately. It was not dropped by accident. It was not washed in by water. It was placed carefully and then covered. The condition of the object supports this conclusion. The bronze surface showed very little corrosion. The knobs were intact. The edges were clean. If the object had been lost or discarded, it would likely show damage from movement or exposure. Its preservation suggests protection from the environment. Burial was controlled and intentional. Placement also matters. The dodecahedron was not thrown into a pit or mixed with waste. It rested in a stable position. This careful placement separates it from trash or broken tools. Romans were practical. When items broke or lost value, they were reused or melted down. Bronze was rarely wasted. Burying a complete bronze object without reuse is unusual. The surrounding finds deepen the mystery. Coins and tools suggest daily activity nearby. Yet the dodecahedron does not behave like a daily object. Its presence among common items raises questions. Was it hidden during a time of change? Was it removed from use? Was it placed there to keep it safe or to prevent its use? Intentional burial changes the conversation completely. It forces scholars to ask why someone would hide such an object. Burial often carried meaning in ancient cultures. Objects were buried to protect them, to retire them, or to separate them from public life. This was especially true for objects tied to belief or ritual. If this object was deliberately buried, what was it being protected from or hidden with? Light, fire, and residue. What science found inside? Once archaeologists understood where the dodecahedron came from, scientists began to study how it behaved. Instead of asking what it looked like, researchers asked what it did. This shift opened a new phase of investigation based on testing rather than theory. Modern researchers created accurate replicas using advanced printing methods. These replicas match the size, shape, and hole placement of real dodecahedra. By using replicas, scientists avoided damaging original artifacts. The goal was not decoration, but behavior. When light passed through the holes, researchers noticed something unusual. The holes did not scatter light randomly. Instead, they projected circular beams that moved in ordered ways when the object was rotated or when the sun changed position. Different hole sizes created different light paths. These patterns repeated when tested under similar conditions. Shadow movement became especially important. As the sun moved across the sky, shadows cast through the holes shifted in predictable ways. Ancient societies paid close attention to shadow movement. Shadows marked time, seasons, and ritual moments. Even without numbers, repeating patterns could signal important points in the day or year. This behavior does not prove timekeeping, but it shows intentional design. Random holes would not create repeatable effects. The object reacts to light in a controlled way. That reaction suggests planning beyond appearance. Laboratory analysis added another layer. Scientists examined residue inside several dodecahedra using microscopic and chemical methods. In some cases, they found traces of carbon. Carbon indicates past exposure to burning organic material. This is not the same as heavy soot or fire damage. It suggests controlled use rather than open flame. Further testing identified traces of plant-based substances. These included resins and oils from plants known in Roman and local traditions. Such substances were commonly used for purification, scent, and ceremonial burning. These materials were not typical for lighting or heating. They were often used in ritual settings. The location of the residue matters greatly. The traces appeared inside the hollow space and near hole edges. This placement rules out simple environmental contamination. Dirt and water leave different patterns. The residues were concentrated where substances would be placed intentionally. If the object had been exposed to random fires or household smoke, residue would appear on the outer surfaces. Instead, the traces were contained. This suggests controlled use involving heat and scent, not accidental exposure. These findings challenge earlier theories. Tools do not require burning plant materials. Decorative objects do not interact with light and residue in this way. The evidence points toward activities that involve atmosphere, timing, and sensory experience. The dodecahedron appears designed to shape light, hold substances, and interact with fire in a limited way. This combination is rare in Roman daily life, but common in ritual practice across many cultures. If these objects were never tools, what kind of ceremonies required light, scent, and fire together? Who made them and how they were controlled? Understanding who made the Roman dodecahedron changes how we see the object. These items were not casual creations. They required skill, planning, and access to valuable materials. In the Roman world, bronze production was tightly organized. Bronze was not freely available to everyone. Copper and tin had to be mined, transported, taxed, and processed. This system was often supervised by the state or by powerful local authorities. Most bronze objects in Roman society were made in controlled workshops. These workshops served the army, temples, and wealthy patrons. Everyday people used wood, clay, or iron. Bronze was saved for items with importance. Tools, weapons, coins, and ritual objects were the main priorities. Anything made from bronze outside these categories required permission, money, or influence. The craftsmanship of dodecahedra shows advanced knowledge. The shapes are precise. The faces are evenly angled. The knobs are carefully placed. This level of work matches trained metalworkers, not hobby makers. Many scholars note similarities between dodecahedra and Celtic bronze traditions. In regions like Gaul and Britain, Celtic artisans had long traditions of symbolic metalwork. Their designs focused on geometry, balance, and meaning rather than decoration. This matters because most dodecahedra are found in former Celtic regions under Roman control. This suggests a blending of Roman resources and local knowledge. Roman authority provided materials and structure. Local traditions provided purpose and meaning. This type of cooperation often occurred in religious practices, especially when Rome allowed local customs to continue quietly. Another important clue is the limited number of known dodecahedra. Fewer than 200 examples exist across the entire former Roman world. That is extremely small when compared to coins, tools, or household items. Such scarcity suggests restricted production. These objects were not mass-produced. They were not traded openly. Knowledge about how to use them may have been limited to small groups. In Roman society, not everyone could commission bronze objects. Outside imperial workshops, only wealthy individuals, priestly groups, or sanctioned guilds had access. Religious specialists often commissioned objects for specific rites. These objects were not marked with names or instructions. This was intentional. Sacred items often avoided inscriptions to protect knowledge and prevent misuse. Roman law adds another layer. The Roman state allowed religion, but it feared unsanctioned divination and private magic. Practices involving prediction, hidden knowledge, or ritual timing were sometimes restricted. Laws existed that punished unauthorized divination, especially when it involved predicting political outcomes or fate. Because of this, objects linked to such practices had to remain discreet. This creates a possible explanation for the silence around dodecahedra. If these objects were linked to controlled rituals, they would not be publicly described. If their use crossed into forbidden areas, they would not be recorded at all. Instead, they would be quietly tolerated for a time, then suppressed when rules tightened or leadership changed. Over time, suppression does not always mean destruction. Sometimes it means removal from public life. Objects are hidden, buried, or passed down secretly. When they are no longer safe to use, they are set aside carefully. This could explain why some dodecahedra were buried intact instead of being melted down. Selective survival is important here. The few dodecahedra that remain may not be random. They may be the ones hidden well enough to escape recycling or destruction. Bronze was valuable. Most unused bronze objects were melted and reused. The fact that these survive suggests intention, not accident. If these objects were controlled, restricted, and dangerous to explain who decided they had to disappear, The silence that speaks loudest. The Roman dodecahedron remains one of the most confusing objects from the ancient world, not because of what is known, but because of what is missing. Roman civilization recorded almost everything that mattered to it. Laws were written down. Religious calendars were preserved. Military equipment was cataloged. Even small household customs were described in texts and carvings. Yet, the dodecahedron does not appear in Roman writing, official art, or instructional material. This silence is the strongest clue of all. The absence is not caused by poor record-keeping. Roman historians, priests, and administrators were detailed and organized. Objects used in daily life usually appear somewhere in the record. Tools were explained, ritual items were named, even foreign religious practices were often described when they entered Roman territory. The complete lack of reference to the dodecahedron suggests intentional exclusion rather than forgetfulness. One reason for this exclusion is that the object does not fit Roman systems of classification. Romans liked order. Items had roles within military, religious, domestic, or political structures. The dodecahedron does not clearly belong to any of these categories. It is not useful for farming or trade. It is not shaped like known ritual tools. It does not appear in temples or public spaces. Because it resisted classification, it also resisted explanation. Museums struggled with this problem for many years. When dodecahedra were discovered, they were often placed in storage rather than displayed. Labels described them as unknown or decorative, even when no decoration was present. Scholars hesitated to focus on them because they challenged accepted ideas about Roman material culture. Objects without clear purpose slow academic progress and create uncertainty. Another reason for the silence is that anomalies threaten established historical stories. Roman history is often presented as logical and structured. The dodecahedron introduces ambiguity. It suggests hidden practices, restricted knowledge, and local traditions operating quietly under Roman rule. These ideas complicate the image of a fully controlled empire. For decades, serious academic attention was limited. Research requires support, and institutions often prefer subjects with predictable results. The dodecahedron offers none. It creates more questions the deeper it is studied. This made it easier to ignore than confront. Change began when independent researchers and smaller academic teams approached the object differently. Instead of forcing it into Roman frameworks, they allowed it to exist outside them. Archaeological context became more important than theory. Scientific testing replaced speculation. When the Norton Disney excavation provided a secure context, the conversation shifted. The object could no longer be dismissed as random or decorative. What became clear over time is that the silence surrounding the dodecahedron is consistent. It appears across different regions. It spans centuries. This pattern matters. Random loss of records would create gaps, not complete absence. Consistent silence suggests a shared decision, whether formal or informal, to avoid documentation. In many ancient cultures, certain knowledge was protected through silence. Writing was powerful, but it also made information permanent and vulnerable. Practices linked to ritual timing, divination, or symbolic meaning were often passed orally. This allowed flexibility and secrecy. When political conditions changed, silence protected practitioners from punishment. Roman law reinforces this idea. While Rome tolerated many religions, it restricted private divination and unsanctioned ritual practices. Anything associated with predicting fate or controlling hidden forces attracted suspicion. If the dodecahedron played a role in such activities, keeping it undocumented would have been a form of safety. Silence also explains the way these objects disappeared from use. They were not smashed or publicly destroyed. Instead, they were buried or hidden. Bronze was valuable, yet many dodecahedra were not melted down. This choice suggests respect, caution, or fear. The object was no longer safe to use, but too important to destroy openly. What can now be stated with confidence is limited but important. These objects were deliberately designed. They were deliberately used. They were deliberately removed from public life. The silence around them is not empty. It is structured and meaningful. If Rome erased this object from its records, what else did it choose to bury with it? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.